But of course, one of the major industries that our society rests on is the sports industry. And it gives me great pleasure to actually have colleagues who care passionately and think deeply about the ways in which sports intersects with society and the ways in which the business of sport actually is a tremendously important aspect of everything we do in society today. So first and foremost, before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to do the one thing that Lisa can't do in thanking everybody is I'd like to thank Lisa Delpy Narati's work and energy in this area. She's truly an innovator in this space, and without her, we would be much less of a school and much less of a university. Now, it gives me great pleasure today to introduce our speaker. One of the other exciting things about being a dean of a business school is you get to spend a lot of time meeting alumni and thinking about how those alumni help and foster the development of the school in key areas. And it's without the support and help of our alumni in these areas, we just would, again, be much less of the institution that we are. One of the people I've had the pleasure of meeting over the last couple of months is Gary Stevenson, who is an MBA alum of the business school, and is somebody who has truly been an innovator in this area of work. Gary started out his career in 1981 to 87. He was the VP of Marketing for Advantage International, which is now Octagon. He spent time as the Executive Vice President of Business Affairs for the PGA Tour. He was the COO and Executive VP and board member of Golf Channel. He then was the president of NBA Properties Marketing and Media Group for the National Basketball Association. And he was the founder and chairman and CEO of OnSport, which was later acquired by the Wasserman Media Group in July of 2007. He's an individual who served on many boards, both commercial and philanthropic. He's taught in this area. And he's just somebody who has really been an innovator and a visionary in helping to create the entire concept of thinking about sport as business and thinking about the ways in which sports marketing and sports management really is a field that students can aspire to. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Gary Stevenson and to thank him for being a part of what we're doing today. Gary?
Thank you, Dean Guthrie. As the Dean said, let me get my housekeeping in order here. As the Dean said, I was in school years ago, exactly 30, and I really had not been involved with George Washington much until the last couple years. I can tell you, since I was in school here, things have changed dramatically, and I give a lot of credit to Dean Guthrie for his vision and where he's trying to take this school. It's very exciting. The reputation of George Washington, both domestic and internationally, has changed dramatically over the last 10 years, and he's got a lot to do with that. I also want to congratulate Lisa Narati, who, as you know, and Dean just said, has been kind of the author of this program at George Washington. When I started in the business in 1981, there were 15 programs in the country that gave degrees in sports marketing. And most of those programs were in parks and recreation management. Two of them, Ohio University and University of Massachusetts, are the most recognizable, but I don't think anybody here could give you who the other 13 were. Now it's amazing how much this has grown. There are 325 degree programs in the United States around sports marketing, both undergraduate and graduate, 9 in Canada, 10 in Europe, 14 in Australia and New Zealand. So clearly, this industry has exploded. One of the things that I think is interesting is that Lisa started this program 20 years and really has single-handedly driven it to have the reputation it has today. So please join me in congratulating Lisa for the work she's done here. You know, when I started thinking about my remarks here today, I was watching the Super Bowl with my 88-year-old father. And when I made my first speech in this industry, I don't know, it must have been 20 years ago, I think it was to some chamber of commerce or something up in Buffalo, New York, I called my dad, who had a pretty good sense of humor, and I said, Dad, I'm panicked. I said, I need a story, help me figure out how I get going on this speech. He said, oh, that's nothing. He said, just tell the story about the quick thinker. So I'm watching the Packers win, and you'll see in a minute, this is a Packer-themed story. But so he told me about the quick thinker. And the quick thinker is there's a young kid from, I guess, George Washington University who got his first job, and he's in the grocery store, and he's stacking lettuce. He's got heads of lettuce, and he's stacking them up there. And there's a guy who is probably a couple 100 pounds overweight, a little disheveled, looked like he might not have had a shower in 30 days. He came up, he said, hey, boy, I need a half a head of lettuce. And the kid looks at the shelf, and there's only whole heads of lettuce. He's not quite sure what to do, so he goes kind of back to the back, and he says to the manager, he said, hey, boss, I need a little help here. He said, there's kind of a gross, slovenly guy out there that asked for a half a head of lettuce. And he turned around, the guy's standing there. And he said, and this fine gentleman would like the other half. So the boss, they take care of him, give him his lettuce, and he leaves. And the boss afterwards said, son, we need quick thinkers like you in our organization. He said, that kind of thinking, well, and you haven't been here long, but we've decided to promote you to Green Bay, Wisconsin to be our store manager. And the guy said, Green Bay? He said, boss, the only thing in Green Bay are prostitutes and football players. And the boss said, well, son, he said, my wife is from Green Bay. And the kid said, well, what position does she play? So thank you to my father for kind of getting me through another one of these presentations. Look, it's a pleasure for me to be back at George Washington, but more importantly, it's a pleasure for me to be here to salute the founders of ProServe, which we're going to do a little later this morning. They gave me and many others in this room our first start in the industry, which, of course, we'll always be grateful for. So my job today is really to kind of serve as the junior varsity game. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where I see the industry today, where we're heading, give you a couple, at least, perspectives from my point of view. But really, I'm kind of the warm-up band for the main event that we'll trot out here in a few minutes. But before I get started, I'd like to understand a little bit about whom is in our audience today. How many of you are students? Wow, lots. How many of you would like to have a job in this industry someday? Actually, how many of you, before you do that, how many of you have a job in this industry now? How many of you would like to have a job in this industry someday? Funny. I like sports and I like marketing, therefore I like sports marketing. We've heard that before. All right, so before you completely commit to this industry, I'd like to kind of perform a little litmus test to make sure that you're comfortable with your decision. He's larger than life, and he is one of sports' biggest celebrities. Shaq, when asked about his intelligence, had this comment: I made a 1600 minus 800 minus 200 on my SAT, so I'm very intelligent when I speak. These are people you get to market if you're in this industry. The next one, probably not many in this room know who this is, but this is the late Tug McGraw, who was a famous reliever for the New York Mets, 1969 New York Mets, and then played for the Philadelphia Phillies. His son is Tim McGraw, who was clearly more famous than his father. But when he was asked if he prefers grass or AstroTurf, his answer was, I don't know, I've never smoked AstroTurf. Again, these are folks you get to market. Okay. Next, some say he's the most famous soccer player of all time, David Beckham. When he was asked whether he is volatile, _volatile, this is what he had to say: I can play in the center, I can play on the right, and occasionally on the left side. He is a volatile player. And finally, near and dear to your hearts here in Washington, your quarterback who changed his name to rhyme with Heisman when he was in college, Joe Theismann, who is now a television analyst for ESPN, had this to say: nobody in football should be called a genius. A genius is a guy like Norman Einstein. So, we're not curing brain cancer here. I just want everybody to know. Okay? There's a lot of Norman Einsteins in this room, including your speaker. But as industries go, this industry really is a relative newcomer, if you think about it. Did it start when Jesse Owens wore Adidas track spikes in Berlin and shocked Adolf Hitler and the world in 1936? Was it when the late Mark McCormick in 1961 started IMG on the shoulders of golf legends Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player, and then later branched out and represented other athletes? What about ProServe, who we're going to talk about a little bit later? In the early 70s, born right here in Washington, D.C., and used tennis as its primary building block. And of all places, in Buffalo, New York, and the beloved Buffalo Bills sold the first naming rights to a stadium in 1972 to Rich Foods for a whopping total of $1.5 million over 25 years. That's total, $1.5 million over 25 years, which pales in comparison to the reported $700 million over 30 years that Farmers Insurance just recently agreed to pay AEG for an NFL stadium in Los Angeles that hasn't been built, hasn't been approved to be built, and doesn't have an NFL team. What about the NFL and its great commissioner, Pete Rozelle, who created the system of aggregating and sharing television rights among its owners, which really drove up rights fees, which is really the engine of sports marketing? Some would say that it's the launch of ESPN in the late 70s that pushed our industry forward. And others would credit Peter Ueberroth's wildly successful 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles as the jumping off point for the commercialization of sports. So there really is not an exact point when this industry started, but what we do know is that it's young, if you think about it, maybe 40 years old. But irrespective of when it started, there's one thing that's clear. It's exploded on the scene over the last 40 years. 325-degree programs in the United States, there used to be 15. It started as a cottage industry primarily at the whim of a CEO's decision or his favorite sport. But now it really is at the center of many marketers' marketing mix. There are no industries, except for maybe music and entertainment, that create the same water cooler buzz that sports creates. But what is it about sports? Why the growth? In a world in which a consumer is bombarded by so many messages every day, and there's so many different ways for that consumer to get the messages, sports is one of the few must-haves in many people's lives. It is like brushing your teeth or finding out about the weather. Consumers want it, they need it, and they'll find it no matter where it is. 25% of every newspaper and every local newscast are dedicated to sports. Consumers have tribal-like loyalty to their teams. Fans feel so deeply passionate when their teams or their favorite athlete wins or loses, makes a shot, misses a putt. You don't find that in many industries. If you think about it, sports content really is the original reality television show. It is human drama that unfolds right in front of your eyes. You must watch it live or you miss it. Those live moments are what makes sports content so valuable and what really separates it from other forms of entertainment. And in the last 20 years, it's been proven for corporate marketers that if they engage with consumers, while consumers are engaging in their passions, they have long-term loyalty with those consumers, and they build a premium brand. It's been proven over and over again. There was a lot of question about that early on in our industry, but there is no question about it now. Sports really is at the crossover with fashion, music, and entertainment, and those things that define hip is unquestionable. There are two companies, in my judgment, who have really understood this nexus between sports and culture over the years, and that's Anheuser-Busch and Nike. I'd like to show you a few ads they did in the 80s and 90s. Some of you may have never seen these, but I believe they captured that connection so well. The first features Michael Jordan and Spike Lee, in which Jordan has a relationship with a fictitious character called Mars Blackman, played by Spike Lee. And if you think about what Nike is doing today with Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba short film, you really get that Nike understands this relationship between athlete and society. They sell lifestyle. They don't sell apparel and shoes. and their advertising reflects that concept. Let's take a look at this spot.
Yo, Mars Black here, and my main man Michael Jordan on the speed dial. Yo, money is me.
Who?
Me.
Who?
Me. From back in the day.
Mars?
Yeah. Is this really it? You're gonna retire? Going to quit? Is it true?
Yes, Mars.
You sure?
Yes, Mars.
Really? Truly? Cross your heart, hope to die, stick a needle in your eye?
Yes, Mars.
Call me back in 5, doing a commercial, Mr. Nike. You gonna hang him up? You gonna be playing golf? No baseball, though. I'll read with dirt. Sayonara. Adios. Avidasing. So long. Goodbye. Farewell. For good. Again?
Goodbye, Mars.
Did anybody notice the Bullets uniform that Spike Lee was wearing? The second ad, is Charles Barkley, who took the position while he was playing that, quote, he was not a role model. He took a beating in the press for saying this. He was irresponsible. How could an athlete say that? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, he really got crucified. Nike, always the athlete's advocate, came to his rescue and explained in the ad that what he was really saying. That really, ultimately, it's a parent's responsibility to raise kids, not an athlete. Whether you like him or not, the guy's honest. And he's translated that honesty into a great career as a corporate pitchman and television announcer. Let's take a look at this one.
I am not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids.
And finally, there's Anheuser-Busch in 1999 that created a campaign that almost never made it on the air because the Anheuser-Busch board believed that this could be offensive in the urban environment. The exact opposite thing happened, and it became kind of the hottest commercial for a couple years. I'll never forget watching this commercial the first time on the Super Bowl. I about fell out of a chair. I thought it was really funny, so I don't know whether you will or not, but you got to look at it because I thought it was funny.
Able to pick up good yardage on the play. The best part of this defense is their defensive line and their interior
Hello?
linebackers.
Hey, who? What's up? Nothing, B. Just watching the game, having a bud. What's up with you? Nothing. Watching the game, having a bud. True. True. What's up? What's up? Yo, who's that? Yo, pick up the phone. Hello? What's that? What's up? Yo, where's Dookie? Yo, Dookie. Yo. What's that? What's that? Hold on. Hello? So what's up, B? Watching the game, having a bud. True.
So you got to understand, I was raising 3 boys at the time, and every time I'd call home, I'd get the what's-up for about 2 years. Anyway, about every 10 years or so, we all hear from the pundits that the sports world is in big trouble. Fans are less and less interested in sports and are turned off by player behavior off the field. Kids don't watch sports because they're playing video games. Ratings are going down because of competition from new media outlets. Media companies will not keep paying increased rights fees because they can't justify it, and corporations are tightening their belts and have reduced marketing budgets, and it goes on and on. But those of us who have been around for a while have seen this movie before. In the late 70s, the broadcast networks were comfortably controlling what sports were put on television. Saturday and Sunday afternoons, and then the radical exception of Monday Night Football. The networks were in control and basically dictated terms to the leagues. And then bam, ESPN was born and the media world was changed forever. Same thing happened in the early 90s. League executives were concerned that rights fees had topped out. And bam, enter Fox, who knocked NBC Sports out of the NFL and built a viable and very competitive network on the shoulders of NFL and Major League Baseball programming. Thanks to those competitors, the competition for sports rights in the 80s and 90s was fierce, and as a result, rights fees for the leagues grew dramatically. But the same thing happened in the last 10 years in which we experienced the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. It's interesting to note that from 2002 to 2011, rights fees in this country grew from $5.3 billion to $9.7 billion, an average of over 7% a year. And in no year, even in the worst years of the recession, did it decrease. There are very few industries that can make that claim over the last 10 years. The growth has been staggering. In 1990, there were 5 national sports cable networks. Now there are 28. Likewise, in 1990, there were 12 regional sports networks. Now there are 45. In 2000, the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball All-Star Games were all on broadcast network, either ABC, NBC, or CBS Sports. So were Monday Night Football and the Rose Bowl. Now, all of those events are on cable, which would have been unthinkable even 10 years ago. And that migration from network to cable has only begun. So clearly, the content distribution world is changing fast. Close your eyes for a second. Take away all iPads, iPhones, Blackberries, Kindles, Nooks, and virtually every other device you can think about, and you'd be in the dark ages of 1994. Just 6 years ago, in 2004, Google had 40 employees. Now they have 20,000. Facebook was a closed network for college students, and now it has over 500 million active users. And YouTube and Twitter did not even exist. YouTube now has 150 million users, and what's interesting is they are now broadcasting the most prestigious cricket competitions in the world from India's Premier League in their entirety on their network. So we have big screens and little screens, flat screens and mobile screens. We have cable companies, satellite companies, phone companies, new media companies, and the list goes on. And guess what all those screens need to succeed? Content. You got it, lots of content. And guess who has lots of content to sell? The sports business. The market for good sports content has never been more fertile, and I believe the market will explode in the next 4 years. This thirst could not come at a better time for the 4 big leagues. This thirst could not come at a better time for the 4 big leagues as they're at an all-time high in business metrics. Let's start with the NFL. The NFL is on a roll. No other way to describe it. They've signed massive sponsorship agreements with Verizon, Anheuser-Busch, and Pepsi over the last 9 months, and increased their rights fees in those 3 categories by over 40% in the process. And Nike recently beat out the incumbent Reebok for the on-field uniform rights beginning in 2012 and paid a hefty fee to do so. Their television ratings are up a staggering aggregate of 24% over the last 2 years. That's 24% over the last two years. Last year's Super Bowl was the most watched sporting event in history with 111 million viewers in the United States. NBC Sports recently announced that it would charge $3.5 million for a 30-second commercial in next year's Super Bowl, which is up from $3 million. ESPN just renewed its package for Monday Night Football through 2022 and increased its rights payment from $1.1 billion per year to nearly $2 billion. It's anticipated that Fox, NBC Sports, and CBS Sports will all pay over $1 billion the next time they negotiate, which is after 2012-2013 season. That's a 50 to 60% increase for each of those companies. And the NFL has made it clear that they're going to add yet another television package to the mix. And Comcast, Fox, and Turner have all raised their hands and said they'd like to be at the table for their cable entities. The NFL domestic television packages will almost double from $3 billion today. Well, actually, it's around 4.5 because of the ESPN renewal. But they will have almost between $6 billion and $7 billion in television revenue when all is said and done with their negotiations. What about Major League Baseball? Their deals go through 2013. Last year, they had a record of $6.8 billion for their league, led in part by their strong asset, Major League Baseball Advanced Media. BAM's revenue has grown from 31 million to 500 million in 10 years, and they now have over 500,000 subscribers who pay for their premium streaming offerings every year. Local television revenues are skyrocketing, as I'll mention in a minute, and their ticket sales and sponsorship revenues last year were up 6.5%. What about NBA? There's got to be a bad story somewhere. What about the NBA? Their TV deals are through the 2015 and 2016 season. Game 7 last year between the Celtics and Lakers was the highest-rated NBA game since Michael Jordan's last game. The season opener this year between the Miami Heat and Boston Celtics did a 4.6 rating on cable, which is the highest rating in NBA history. And their ratings this year are up 26% on TNT, 15% on ESPN, and 32% on ABC this season, which is on top of impressive gains last year. How about the NHL? Where's the bad news? Game 6 of last year's Stanley Cup final, in which the Blackhawks won, delivered the NHL's best rating in 36 years, which is timely since their TV deals are up this year. They've really struggled with their last 2 negotiations because they only had one company at the table. But now ESPN, Turner, Fox, and incumbents Versus and NBC plan on being there. It's likely that their television revenue, which is now around $77 million, will triple in their next negotiation, which is going on right now. So as you look forward, what are the things that you should look for? I'll give you 6 things that I think are on the horizon that I think we should pay attention to. One is the Comcast-NBC-Universal merger. The new entity that surfaces from the Comcast-NBC-Universal merger will quickly become a superpower and will be at the table for every major negotiation in sports. Besides owning NBC, Telemundo, USA Network, Versus, CNBC, MSNBC, and the Golf Channel, Comcast has 22.8 million cable subscribers, which makes it the biggest cable company. They have 17 million homes with high-speed internet. They have 8.6 million phone subscribers, and they have 10 regional sports networks. If you combine those assets with an all-star senior management team led by Brian Roberts, Steve Burke, Dick Ebersol, and Mark Lazarus, you can bet that this company will challenge Disney and ESPN at every level for sports supremacy. It's hard to believe that ESPN could someday be knocked out of their perch, but keep an eye on this company. The second thing, Fox and Turner. Both Fox and Turner have recently declared that they intend to be much more active in pursuing sports rights. Historically, FX, which is Fox's cable company, cable network, has chosen to stay out of the sports business. In the past month, they have made it clear that sports will be part of their overall programming mix going forward. Turner, on the other hand, has picked and chosen certain opportunities for TNT, with NBA programming, Major League Baseball playoffs, and now the NCAA basketball tournament in partnership with CBS. They have decided to be much more aggressive in pursuing their rights, not only for TNT, but also for True TV, which is formerly known as Court TV. So all of a sudden, there are basically 2 more entrants at the auction table, which will significantly drive up revenues for the league. 3, mobile growth. The growth of mobile devices worldwide is staggering. There are currently 5 billion mobile devices outside the United States and 260 million in the United States. And mobile traffic is expected to grow 26-fold by the year 2015. The NFL signed a huge deal with Verizon that gave Verizon proprietary content. As a result, many cable operators who view the phone companies as competitors are refusing to carry the NFL network. This is a story worth watching. You can bet that mobile device companies will start buying more proprietary content in the future. 4, Time Warner is now buying rights. In an effort to preempt Fox and Comcast from controlling new regional sports networks, Time Warner has recently stepped up and made 2 stunning local team deals. They paid the Lakers $3.4 billion over 20 years, which averages nearly $170 million per year for their local rights beginning in 2012 and 2013 season. That is up from $30 million per year that Fox Sports pays now. So the Lakers go from $30 million a year to $171 million a year for local television rights. In effect, they took away games that Fox was already carrying on their network. It's quite stunning. They also just recently did a deal with the Texas Rangers, $3 billion for 20 years. Again, a stunning deal. The Texas Rangers' local television rights are going to increase from $41 million a year to $150 million a year, beginning, I think it's either next year or the year after. That's $100 million that goes to the Texas Rangers' bottom line. Well, not bottom line. It probably goes to left-handed relievers. But at least they have more money to spend. The fifth area to keep an eye on is new media. Google has big aspirations for Google TV and is gearing up for a sports division to be one of its three pillars. YouTube would like to have full game programming similar to what they do in cricket and are already in discussions with the NHL and NBA. These are deep-pocketed companies who, if they decided to acquire programming, could really change the dynamics forever. And finally, the sixth issue is labor. Of course, labor is the big elephant in the room right now. I don't believe there's ever been a time when all four collective bargaining agreements for the four major leagues expire in an 18-month period. But that's the case right now. You'd have to have your head in the sand not to know what's going on with the NFL. The NBA expires at the end of June 2011. Major League Baseball expires in December of this year, and the NHL expires at the end of September 2012. It is conceivable. It is not kind of pie in the sky. It is conceivable that as many as 3 leagues could have work stoppages of some sort in the next 2 years. And if that happens, that bright, rosy picture I painted this morning could become a huge, dark cloud. Thank you very much.